All right. Welcome to the third Welcome to the third episode of DecentMed Spotlight. Today we are here with Dr. Teresa Volner of Total Care Chiropractic and Total Care Health Solutions. Dr. Tess, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tess Volner. Actually, Dr. Teresa Volner, but my brother couldn't say Teresa when I was born, so that's how I got my nickname. But I've been in chiropractic and natural medicine over 20 years now. And I started because my youngest, I have 3 children, and my youngest is turning 30 this year. But when she was born, she threw my back out.
Mm.
And that's the first time I had ever been to a chiropractor. And I soon after became one, which was crazy because I never wanted to be responsible for anyone's health. But then I realized I'm not responsible. I coach you, you're responsible. And there is so much to know, so much to learn. And I found that after so many years of being in chiropractic, doing some chiropractic internal medicine, which I spent over 5 years in education on, in addition to chiropractic college, that the information kept being repeated. Like the most common reason for the mid back to go out is acid reflux, stomach problems. The most common reason for low back pain in this office has been chronic constipation or irritable bowel syndrome. And so I started doing the natural medicine more and more, and now I'm adding that as an online adjunct when I developed Total Care Health Solutions and a complete online program called Winners in Diabetes, put diabetes into remission forever, because it is simple to do but hard to apply, because we have so many things bombarding our lives, and coaching through that, every nuance, is important to have someone by your side who knows how to do that well.
100%. And I want to start with functional medicine. When it comes to the healthcare industry, you have traditional medicine, which is conventional and has a ton of terms. Then you have the holistic medicine space, which, in my opinion, has done a much better job at causing real health changes. And it's been branded as alternative medicine. But doctors like yourself have rebranded it into functional medicine. So, for the audience, what is functional medicine and how do you use it?
Functional medicine is a process of getting your whole body back into normal function. And we use the same tests and some additional tests that medical physicians do, but we interpret it different in a more holistic way. Because what has happened in the medical profession is that there are specialties, and specialties are good. I really prefer the term integrative medicine because we all could work together, but the philosophy is different. The medical profession has the idea of symptom treatment, symptom treatment, symptom treatment. But really, if you put many symptoms together, it's about functioning of the body. How is that functioning properly? Your stomach is giving you chronic constipation because maybe your thyroid isn't working very well. And it takes maybe 2 years to get to a specialist, all the way to the end to a diagnosis in the regular medical model right now, because you go through your primary care. The primary care spends months on what they know. Then there are things they won't test because only the specialist is allowed to test those things now. And that has become, really in the last 5 years, much more narrow and much harder to access. And that's the problem I see in the medical profession right now, is there is no access to the testing you actually need. And even during COVID, things were shut down and the access was so pronounced how much we could not get access. Even since then, it has not returned to the pre COVID state about getting access even to your physical therapy appointments, even to a neurology or a gastroenterology specialist. I spent in 2020 and 20 to 2022 2 years trying to figure out why I had symptoms of multiple sclerosis. 2 years it took to finally get to the point of learning that I did not have multiple sclerosis. But it took months and months of testing before it was narrowed down to a viral outbreak that I had no idea I had. So thankfully, we were able to treat that because the physician I was speaking with said, good news, you don't have MS. Bad news, you have this Epstein-Barr virus that has come on you. And if you've ever heard of that, it causes mono and other liver problems. And I said, well, now what's the next step in the regular physician world? And he said, there isn't one. I recommend going to an alternative practitioner because they're still using the words alternative instead of integrative or working together because they know how to handle chronic diseases better. And if you think about it, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, these are all chronic ailments that are not handled very well in the medical profession. So I've come to see the medical profession as keeping you from dying, which is significantly important, but not helping you to live and live in the fullness of life that you were intended to.
I love how you said integrative, because that's really the goal of this platform, is to put holistic and functional medicine practitioners on the same level so that medical doctors start to value you and see you on the same level. Because as you mentioned, it's called alternative medicine. So it becomes the alternative when traditional medicine doesn't work. But the reality is that traditional medicine hasn't worked in a lot of cases, whether it comes to the big C word, the C word that we now happened in 2020, whether it comes to heart disease, when it comes to things like autism or anxiety, or in your case, with MS and the fact that you didn't even have MS. So,
Oh, indeed, indeed. And with those challenges, also insurance doesn't cover what we do, even though we're doing a lot of the same things. And some things we have been able to bill through insurance, but really, insurance looks at even I have a legitimate physician title as a chiropractic physician, and I can bill insurance, but I can't bill the same things, nor do I get reimbursed for the same things the way that an MD or a DO gets reimbursed. And so the disparity, even in salary, is challenging. So we work that much harder to make sure you stay well.
oh, it's horrible. And I've spoken about this in a couple episodes prior. The fact that practitioners and doctors like yourself, you have to run a business. With traditional medicine, you don't have to run a business. You can just go and do your job like an employee. With a chiropractor like yourself, you have to legitimately do sales and marketing, and like you mentioned, with insurance and PR and advertising and all of these things that you really don't want to do. But you mentioned insurance, so I want to stick there for a little bit,
Mhm.
because one thing that we're working on, and as we spoke off platform, I mentioned to you how I'm trying to set up a calendar system where people can book on our platform at decentmed.com, or decentmed.org/chiropractic so that people can book directly. And the reason for that is because, as you mentioned, we want to have an insurance program utilizing our apothecary. So, my question for you regarding insurance is how has that, and you touched on it a little bit, how has it impacted your business not being able to accept insurance? And if you do accept insurance, having the insurance system be an extremely difficult and arduous process?
Well, because I'm doing everything, I have to pay for everything out of my salary. Whereas a regular physician walks into the office as an employee and gets paid his full salary, his or her full salary. They have a higher malpractice insurance rate because we rarely cause anyone any difficulties that has to be turned into a malpractice suit. But we have all the other expenses of rent, employees, the lights, the water, the sewage, yes, building maintenance. So it's a lot of challenges there. And insurance reimburses a chiropractic physician at 30%, even doing the exact same code and the exact same job as a MD or a DO in the world of insurance. What I do know is that if you want to increase reimbursement capabilities through medical channels, you really have to start with Medicare, because shortly after Medicare accepts anything as insurance reimbursable, then it becomes nationwide for the most part in all other insurances, because Medicare drives the market. The challenge I see is if apothecary becomes insurance reimbursable, then it becomes federally regulated. And when regulation occurs, there's benefits and there's detriments. So, for instance, if we took vitamin C as regulated by the Federal Trade Commission and DEA and all of the enforcement powers that be, vitamin C could be more pure, more organic, more dose regulated. But on the negative side, if it has to be prescribed and you have to go through a pharmacy in order to get vitamin C, how available, how accessible would something as benign as vitamin C be to the average individual? And how much would it cost? You would have to get a doctor's visit, pay a copay, go through a pharmacy, which would increase the price of vitamin C at least 30%. And it would reduce your accessibility, and possibly the American Medical Association would say your highest dose of vitamin C would be 60 milligrams, when in fact we know when we're talking about the big C word, you need at least 3,000 to possibly 10,000 to 20,000 units in your system to fight the big C. How do you get that available to you, accessible to you, when you add another layer on to your physician? And how long does it take to get to the specialist that's allowed to prescribe you 2,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 units of vitamin C? That is a whole political whirlwind. The positives and the negatives exist. And all the time, we have to say, buyer beware. You have to research even what's over the counter. Do I go to Walmart for a vitamin C? Is that safe? Long-term use? What happens there? And that's where a specialist like me could tell you, if you're going to be taking 10,000 units a day of vitamin C for any length of time, You need to add minerals. You need to reimburse your body some of what that product does to you. What are the side effects? You may have a loose stool and be close to a toilet. As my friends say, you don't dare fart if you're taking a super high dose orally of vitamin C. But it's a chelation agent. It could remove heavy metals from your body, but it can also erode your own minerals. And that's why I recommend taking a multi mineral supplement whenever you're using a high dose of vitamin C.
That's a great point that you brought up, is that it really is a yin and yang when it comes to the regulatory bodies and insurance. It's that, yes, we want to make things more accessible, but the problem is that when we work with the AMA and some of these regulatory bodies, it actually takes away the accessibility and giving the credibility. So it's really that yin and yang of accessibility versus credibility. And that's an issue that, like you mentioned, I never thought about, is the fact that when you make things more credible, like in the case of vitamin C, it can actually take away the accessibility and then make it harder for people to access. And like you also mentioned, it all comes back to education. And I want to talk about some of your services when it comes to education, because I think that's really the biggest issue that people face is chiropractic, for example. When I think of chiropractic, all I think about is back pain. Well, I don't have back pain, but 80% of people do have back pain at some point in their lives. But what I found was speaking with multiple chiropractors is that chiropractic does so much more than just back pain. It can help with things like autism, for example, because as children who have autism, typically their cranial sacral bones in their neck are messed up. So when they have chiropractic care, it helps with that. So can you educate the audience about the benefits of chiropractic that goes beyond just simple back pain or just pain in general?
And it goes back to philosophy. As we had talked about functional medicine, chiropractic has a philosophy. And the chiropractic philosophy is neuromusculoskeletal combined helps control your entire body. Your nervous system is the first front to every action that's going on in your body. You step into a cold room, your nervous system feels the cold and starts reacting immediately to change your blood flow, change your blood pressure, change your mucus around your eyes and nasal passages. I don't know if you've noticed when you stepped into a highly air conditioned space and you want to sneeze. It's about getting fluids in places that you don't dry out, you don't get too cold, you get more blood flow. And it's because of the adaptability of the body and the nervous system telling the adrenal gland, hey, we have to adapt, something changed. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but sometimes when you stand up too quickly and you get dizzy, just a little lightheaded, that's a slowness or a lagging in your adrenal function because your nervous system told it to do something, but it's overwhelmed and exhausted, and it can't balance that blood pressure change when you go from laying, sitting to standing very quickly. It can't adapt. And so when we balance the nervous system, and that's what chiropractic adjustments do, they alleviate pressures and changes and flow in your cerebrospinal fluid and your nervous system that helps everything adapt and work much more efficiently. So even if I changed nothing about your eating, your exercise, your lifestyle, I have seen someone within 2 weeks go from super high blood pressure because he couldn't afford medication. I said, just stop by my office every day for the next 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks' time of balancing his spine, his blood pressure came down almost in perfect range with no medication. That's miraculous. I have seen digestive issues resolve with just an adjustment Because when the nerves are pinched that go to your blood pressure control, your thyroid control, your stomach control, when we balance that nervous system, your body is created to heal itself. You don't tell a scratch on your arm to heal. It develops little fibrin tissues that form a scab, and all kinds of work goes on underneath that scab in order for you to heal. You didn't tell it to heal. You didn't tell it how fast to heal. Your body does that. It's a miracle. You are a walking, talking, living, breathing miracle. Every aspect of how your body works, I find way amazing. And I'd love to help get it back in normal function as much as possible, because there are other things in our environment that are more damaging today than even in the years in the late 1800s is when chiropractic became a profession. And since then, so many more chemicals and food additives, drywall, glue in our carpets, so many chemicals have come at us that it takes more than just the adjustment these days to really bring down all the inflammation in your body. Because in the late 1800s, early 1900s, when even Cleveland Chiropractic College was just a thought in Carl Cleveland Sr.'s mind, his grandmother, was adjusting people, and their tumors and organs and everything were becoming whole and healthy with just the adjustment. But now it takes a little bit more than that because of all the chemicals we're exposed to on a daily basis. And that's where having knowledge of the right supplements for your body comes in. Is it okay if I move into DNA testing?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I do testing now, and that's part of functional medicine, is doing tests that help to reveal what is your best way to live. What supplements do you need? What foods are best for you? What are you sensitive to? Because even something like green beans, which is normally very benign food, maybe your body is sensitive to a part of that food that makes it real difficult to have it in your body without causing a low-grade chronic inflammation. And as we have seen in much research, that low-grade chronic inflammation causes insulin resistance, plaquing in the arteries, all kinds of changes occur because your body is doing its best to survive under our current system, under our current bombardment. That we do DNA testing to see what your body has needed from the beginning. And we also do oxidative nutrition stress testing to see what has occurred over the past 2 months that bombard your body, what has been safe for your body. So we have a signal in the testing that is green light, red light, yellow light foods, things you're exposed to like cadmium and mercury, things that your body is sensitive to. Maybe you're using Lysol at home. I probably shouldn't use a name, but maybe you're using a cleaner at home that your body now is very sensitive to, and it causes a low-grade chronic inflammation. So if you wonder why it's so hard to balance blood sugar, to balance your blood pressure, sometimes it's one of those things. So I do those 2 tests most commonly because it gives me a window of what always should have happened and what is bombarding you today. The challenges we face when we're making changes, even based on testing, is the realization that we did something wrong. How about wrong to our body up to this point? Really what it is we weren't knowledgeable about what our body needed. And without testing here and there, some of us will never know what our body really needed. I know for myself, I've been lactose intolerant since my early 20s. And with the ailment that I had in 2020, all of a sudden my DNA switches have flipped, and now I am completely dairy intolerant. Had I not done testing to see I actually have DNA SNPs that that trigger lactose and dairy intolerance. And that's how your DNA testing can help reduce chronic low-grade inflammation.
It's funny because in episode 1, Lori Graham, our nutritionist, said, "Don't guess, test."
Yes.
In episode 2, our Ayurvedic physician mentioned something similar to what you said, which is everyone's body is different. Everyone has different doshas. So to prescribe one diet is not, obviously there's things like you mentioned with, there is red light foods that you shouldn't have. You shouldn't use fragrances like you mentioned, because those can cause, the C word and other chronic inflammation diseases.
Mm-hmm.
But like you mentioned, I like how you work on people's specific DNA to determine their diet, the way they should live, and everything else. Because I also have lactose intolerance,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people just think, "Oh, well, I'll just use Lactaid." But the reality is that, like you mentioned, you're better off just avoiding it completely. So with those red light foods, are there some examples that you found in your practice as far as commonalities among people when it comes to red light foods, and specifically in women?
Well, I have someone's test in front of me. Let's see what hers says. And it fits our age range and demographics, because most of us don't start paying attention. Sorry. Most of us don't start paying attention until we get past age 40. After age 40, our body starts to dehydrate a little faster. It's harder to hang on to muscle mass, bone density, challenges. It's very challenging. It's because of mineral deficiencies most of the time. But let me get to, and she had a pretty good report overall. But things like uh, her yellow light foods, cod liver oil, squash, honey, dark chocolate. I see dairy on a list quite frequently. Let's get to her red light foods. And it's different for everyone. But her hers had cow's milk, Monterey Jack cheese, lactose, beta-lactoglobulin. And that's interesting because that's a different food. So getting so specific that you are eliminating a whole category of foods because it's down to this one item that is in the milk. It's very crazy. But her dairy alternatives also were a challenge. She cannot do soy milk or soy yogurt. And so each person, as we're trying to find alternatives for you, having this oxidative nutrition stress test really helps us to know, well, if you can't do regular milk, in the old days, in the 80s, when I found out I was lactose intolerant, I switched to soy milk. It was the only thing accessible at the time. My poor self, I starved myself for cravings for ice cream. The only thing non-dairy available at the time was frozen non-dairy whipped cream, which is not a food, by the way. But gee, when you have a craving for ice cream, you're just jonesing. You got to figure out something. Man, it was so hard. I finally learned how to take super ripe bananas and break them into chunks in the freezer so that I could throw them in the blender with my soy milk, and I had a nice creamy dessert. But that took a while to figure out, and I have spent, since age 20, 40 years of figuring out what works, and there's so much more accessible today. Oh, life is so much easier now if you have to make a switch than what it was in the 1980s. I will tell you that. But Uh, she even has sensitivities to rye and arrowroot and buckwheat and potato flour. So, different items that you would still think were benign. And this is the challenge. And this is what an allergy really is, it's a normal, benign food or environmental item that is triggering an immune response and a histamine overload. And histamine overloads keep you from getting deep sleep. It wakes you up at 4 in the morning. It really is challenging to get a quality sleep and thus regeneration in your body when you have an overload of histamine. And so these tests help us to lower your body's histamine response. Fish and seafood. She has crawfish, red bass, tuna, oysters, and trout as sensitivities. So even switching to some fish gets challenging if you know you have a sensitivity to it, because having over 1,000 things tested with a simple test that I can send to your home, that's so amazing now. Just 5 years ago, this capability didn't exist, that I could just take 10 strands of your hair and test all these things. And the DNA test itself is a cheek swab, which is cotton swab inside the cheek, and send it to the lab. And in 6 weeks' time, we know what your body has always needed, where your weaknesses are, why it was so easy for your Achilles tendon to snap because you were playing basketball daily and your body said, my DNA says I need to take a break in between those days, just a little bit more. So we overdo it with our body, we overwork our body without even knowing what some of the limitations have been from the beginning. So I do love having tests like this. Like, how bad can a cucumber be? But it's on her test. And so eating a cucumber, tomato's not on her list. So she can have a tomato, but not a cucumber, in order to lower her inflammation. It's just fascinating. And some of the other things that we look for in our tests: insecticides, weed killers, cleaners, and some trees in the environment, or nylon. She's sensitive to nylon. So she's going to have to order silk hose when she goes to church. There are just so many variables that we don't even think about. But when you end up having a chronic ailment, or just when you end up having a chronic ailment, and I went to my regular MD before I went to the specialist trying to get help. And I said, I can't explain it to you. I was up here and now I feel down here. I was here and I feel here. In my body, I can tell something has changed, something's wrong. And I already knew so many other things. And this was even before I started DNA testing, which has been a game changer for my clients. The physician I had at the time said, you look normal. We can't find anything in your normal blood test, even though my liver enzymes were slightly elevated. She said, let me give you the number. And I've heard this before. Let me give you the number to a psychologist who can talk you through why you're feeling so different. I said, it's not a mental issue. I really have a problem. When I was in my early 20s trying to figure out why I was sick all the time, my physician said, you need to go see a specialist in psychology. But they did not have a diagnosis for hypoglycemia and lactose intolerance at the time. So the ignorance of the profession can be a challenge. My physician this time did not believe I had MS, so she refused to do any testing. Thankfully, she is retired and not blocking anyone else's access to good treatments. But it's so challenging when a doctor tells you, you're crazy. There's nothing wrong with you. When you know physically there is something wrong, and we know our bodies better than anyone else. I know when I'm blue, and that's not what was wrong with me at the time. I had serious shooting electrical pains behind my eyes and in my arms and legs. My whole spine was in pain. And I have scoliosis, so I already knew my spine's a little wacky. But my physician refused to send me to a neurologist. I had to seek one out myself, call several that specialized in MS before I could get my foot into the door, and I'm a physician.
And that's the problem. The problem is that not only do they focus on looking at the body at not an interconnected system, but most importantly, it seems like there's so much competition in this industry that they see you as a threat. Last night, we spoke with an Ayurvedic physician, Stacy Theodosin, and she mentioned how she had cystic fibroids, and they told her to just get surgery. She now has two children. If she were to
Oh,
do that when she was younger, she wouldn't have those children. And
yeah,
she went and she saw an Ayurvedic physician, and an Ayurvedic physician changed her foods, prescribed essential oils, and now she has two children, and she doesn't have the fibers anymore. And she also used energy healing as well.
yes,
And it goes to show, like you mentioned, that there's a real disconnect when it comes to the test and when it comes to prescribing. They are quick to prescribe a pill, but they're not quick to prescribe a test to determine what is wrong with you. I remember the first time I went to a chiropractor, the first thing they did was x rays. Before an adjustment, before a consultation, they did x rays because I have high inflammation in my back and in my spine. So they did the x rays to determine that. And even when you brought up with food, I struggle with constipation. And what I found is that how you mentioned with this woman's test, when I eat meat, it tends to actually make the constipation even worse. And I have to go on more walks, and I eat chia seeds, with my meals. I'm going to probably start doing chia seeds 2 times a day instead of 1 time a day because my constipation is, I can only use the bathroom 1 time a day instead of the standard 2 or 3 that most people do. And I think it's because of my diet and, the lack of fiber. And I think that that's something, and I went to see a naturopath that has helped me with all this stuff. And
yes,
like you mentioned, naturopathy, and I'd love for you to speak on what naturopathy actually is and how it can help people, but how it's helped me is that it looks at the body as an interconnected system. It's a unimodal or a bimodal approach. So they look at nutrition, like you mentioned with DNA testing. Even with you do with chiropractic, you're also utilizing hyperbaric chambers. You're also looking at holistic health labs and tests. You're utilizing a multiplicity of approaches instead of just saying, okay, an adjustment's all you need, or okay, nutrition's all you need. So can you talk on naturopathy and how you utilize the bimodal approach?
so just looking at constipation, for instance, there's this space at your low back that go to that go to the nerves that control bowel function, whether it's the exit, the transportation, So that lumbar spine is going to be connected to the function of your abdomen and lower pelvic regions and your legs. So looking at only that sometimes is enough to get bowels moving. My sister always says, gee, if I get an adjustment from you, I have to go immediately. And pretty much she does. Every time I see her, I give her adjustment, she goes straight to the restroom. She has a number 2. So that's one thing. But doing a stool test to see what probiotics are in your intestines and what pathogenic biotics are in your intestines would also give you this picture, because what you consume, your body develops an adaptation for what you are consuming. So, for instance, eating beans, people get gas. There's all kinds of poetry around gas, beans, etc., etc. Uh, it's the musical fruit, so to speak. But if you eat beans consistently for a few weeks, your liver and your body develop or increase the number of enzymes it takes to digest that food. And there's probiotics in your intestines that grow more from the fibers of beans than from meat. And those would also help with that digestion, preventing gas formation. And some of us have a healthy enough liver to perform that task of making more of the correct enzymes that you need. On the other hand, eating meat, you are changing the trajectory of your intestines and allowing some pathogenic biotics in your gut that cause diabetes, that cause high blood pressure, that cause IBS and constipation. Because I did the stool test. I've done the stool test on several people. We have found yeast overgrowth. We have found a biotic that causes constipation overgrowth. If things stay in balance, and typically we like to see 85% good bacteria in your intestines and 15% bad or whatever neutral bacteria in your intestines, they help to balance each other out. But in the United States, what is truly happening is we have 85% of willy-nilly bacteria and yeast and all kinds of things that are negative for us, and only 15% of good bacteria. And here's one test that will tell you how I know that if eating 1 cup of yogurt makes you feel so much better, then your body is so depleted that it is just thanking you for finally giving it something that it has needed for so long, that it just goes, wow, I feel great now. But in reality, you've just barely nudged the dynamics of 85% bad and 15% good. We really need to bring it all the way back around. And some of the paradigm in our thinking, in that my blood sugar is stable on my medication, I don't need to do anything else. I'm fine doing this, and my insurance pays for it, and there's nothing else I need to do. But in reality, your body is not stable. If you remove medication and it cannot be stable on its own, then it's unhealthy and needs to be addressed. It needs real help. And yes, sometimes that means making a change on your part. And change can be quite scary. Change is hard. But what if the changes were just simple little shifts? One of my friends said, anytime she's having a struggle, she just remembers to make just a quarter turn just a quarter turn in thinking, in a habit, drinking a little more water, sleeping a little more, figuring out one small quarter turn, one small change in how you direct. When you see a straight line across a page, it's short, it looks pretty straight. But if that line shifts just a little, you're going in a completely different direction. And the totality of how that diverges over time, that one small step gives you a huge impact in your results over time. Huge. And that's what I do, is help you choose one small step at a time so that your trajectory is towards health and not away, towards balance and not away.
So you mentioned diabetes, and I want to transition to your other website, Total Care Health Solutions. And you have a program called Winners in Diabetes. You mentioned how meat can lead to diabetes. And I think there's a big disconnect where people think of diabetes, they think, oh, sugar. I need to not eat as much candy and cakes and cookies and things like that. But what I find really interesting is there's an NFL athlete. His name is DK Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
And DK Metcalf says that what he eats is candy. Granted, he's working out like crazy. He has, an NFL athlete regimen as
Mm-hmm.
far as athletics and exercise. I mean, if you've ever seen the guy, he's built like a tank. He's got like an 8-pack.
Yeah.
So, can you dispel some myths about diabetes and then speak about your program?
There was a research project where they took two groups of healthy people and they put one on a high carb, high sugar diet and another group on a high fat diet, which some people are calling keto these days. So, after a period of time, they had to stop the research project. They found that people on the high fat diet were becoming diabetic. They were showing signs of insulin resistance, fatty liver disease, higher cholesterol, which you would think would be a no brainer in a high fat diet, but the whole system was becoming clogged because of how the body deals with that fat. Fat actually becomes sugar in the body faster than sugar does. There's another project where they took two groups of healthy men who were overweight and they were pre-diabetic. So they were showing signs of elevated blood sugar just in their daily regimen. So they took the exact same foods for each group. They had them prepackaged and everything. So, two groups, but they gave one group the ability to eat whenever they wanted, and they limited the second group to just eating between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. Now, that's challenging for those of you who work nights. But the group that worked or ate their food between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. So the group that ate their food between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m., their blood sugar began to come into alignment. They stopped showing signs of prediabetes. Their hemoglobin A1C came down into normal range. So there are so many things that can be done. When we talk about diabetes, what goes in your mouth and when it goes in your mouth is 85% of your success rate. Exercise, on the other hand, boosts it a little more. It's 15% of your success rate. It's kind of interesting that it's similar numbers to what your intestines are, but it is 15% of your success rate. So someone who is young, and I believe if you think about it, when you were 18, 20, 25, you could probably stay up 4 days straight and still go to work and eat whatever you wanted, and it had very little impact because you could recover. Your organs could recover. But there's a threshold in your liver, in your organ systems, that says, so I can handle this, I can handle that, I can handle that. But here I'm starting to get symptoms of joint aches and pains, and I'm starting to get allergies, and I'm starting to have difficulty falling asleep. Then you start getting disease processes, organ failure, and now you're on medications in order to live. Because I know someone who smoked over 50 years. She decided to eat at restaurants based on what she wanted for dessert for the day. Uh, you know, her idea of eating fruit was apple pie and banana split. This was my mother, by the way. She knows I talk about her. And now she is alive. Really, she is alive because of medications, heart failure, kidney failure, lipedema, the poor woman. But medications cannot control everything, and medications cannot give you a quality of life. She was beginning to lose her ability to walk. And I sat at her apartment and I said, "Mom, what are you eating? Let's go through everything you're eating every day and look at all the ingredients and see what's causing this explosion in your legs and your stiffness." And she was eating nearly 3,000 milligrams of salt per day on the highest. So there is a medication called furosemide. It's a water pill, what people just call their water pill. My mother was on the times 30 strength water pill. For short, they call it BMX. So she was on this times 30 strength water pill, and she was still swelling. So we went through her diet, discovered this salt intake, because your DNA will tell you if you are salt sensitive, caffeine sensitive, lactose intolerant, prone to autoimmune diseases like IBS and Crohn's disease and MS and other things, which I do have that DNA SNP. So that's why I'm on it, trying to make sure I don't actually go full-blown disease. But we went through her diet, changed what she was doing, and now she needs less of that water pill. And she can walk, and she can live a higher quality of life. Because if you can't drive, it's extremely isolating. If you can't walk, it's impossibly isolating. You can't get in and out of a car. You can't, if someone else is driving, you can't even go because you can't get in and out of vehicles. And you can't walk down to bingo night in your building. And you can't go to the special Valentine's lunch because you can't get there. It is extremely isolating, which on the psycho-emotional side of things, depressing. It is severely depressing. So we cleaned up what Mom needed. and she is doing very well. And she can get in and out of my van to go to church and hang out with people who love on her and hug her. And it's so brilliant. But we have to address these issues when they arise and spend the time investigationally. And as you've mentioned earlier, don't guess, test, measure, figure it out. It takes a great Sherlock Holmes to figure out sometimes what you really need. But that's where testing is just amazing. It's changed everything and made it so much easier that I'm not even telling you what's good for you. Your own body is telling you what's good for you.
I love that. And it's funny because, yesterday I was speaking about community and you touched on it, how in places like Mexico or Suriname, where it's a third world country, you see very low rates of self deletion. And it's because they're communal. People go outside, they talk to each other. Every day I go out and here in Puerto Vallarta and people speak with one another. People say hi to each other. They don't, people smile at people. And in the United States, you're losing that sense of community. People are not that friendly with each other. People don't know their neighbors. People don't like to talk to each other. So that psychology plays a massive role. And I think that's one thing, even when you brought up with church, that mind, body, spirit, I think that's something that is missing with traditional medicine, especially in third or first world countries like in the US, where people are just so disconnected. Yesterday, Stacy Theodosin, our Ayurvedic physician, mentioned that you have to look at health like a three-legged stool. You can have great mental health, and great spiritual health, but if you don't have the physical health, then the stool is messed up. If you have great physical health and you have great mental health, but you don't have any spiritual, and it doesn't mean go to church or be a Christian. It means any kind of spiritual sense of connecting with the earth. And if you don't have that, then you lose that sense of health. And I think that's something that holistic and functional medicine does a better job at than traditional medicine does. And I love that story of your mother, of how maybe that psychological aspect is what put her into gear of saying, you know what, I will cut back on the salt. I will cut back on the sugar. And even when you mentioned about age, when I was younger in college, I ate Chick-fil-A every single day. It just about, 6 days a week, obviously. But but I couldn't, and now I can't even eat one thing of Chick-fil-A without getting sick. And it's because I'm allergic to soy, like you mentioned earlier, and there's a lot of things I can't eat that I used to eat as I go into my 30s and beyond. So my question for you is, how do you look at those other elements when it comes to the tests?
Especially when someone has a chronic disease, I ask about what kind of support do you have? Do you have family around that is on board? Should we bring them in for consultation so that they understand what's going on? I have, even in my chiropractic office, I have families that come see me, maybe not all at the same time, but I have a mother-daughter combination that come in, and mom has a severe chronic disease. And the daughter is like, I don't understand why she can't just get up and take a walk. And I said, well, let's explain to you what it feels like to have this. So she has more empathy now and understands why getting a housekeeper for mom is a good idea. Because even though mom wants to live in a cleaner environment, mom has no energy. She can go to the bathroom and back to her chair when she has done her treatment. And on good days, she can go to the grocery store and back home. But that's it. And so understanding what people are going through is huge. And having a support system that is understanding is huge, so that you don't feel like you're walking in shame. If I keep telling my mom, gee, if you'd have quit smoking sooner, how is that going to help us now? It's not. It's going to create an environment of shame. And in Christianity, it's one of the things that Jesus has stressed. I have not come into the world to condemn the world, but that through me the world could be saved. And just looking at how we think, how we speak to ourselves, how we speak to each other, creates life or creates shame and condemnation. And yes, sometimes we do need a swift kick in the pants, but usually we don't need to live in that, right? We don't need to stay in that. And we've never been meant to stay in condemnation ever. That's the beauty of repentance. It's gone. There was a research project, your thoughts on the world, for instance. There was a research project, and you can see it on YouTube, where a gentleman froze water with words attached to it. And so he froze water with a label: anger, hate, dissension, war. And the water would actually freeze in ugly formations. And he would freeze water with love, purity, peace, tranquility. And the water would form each time differently, but beautiful crystal formations that were just amazing. Even having people pray, completely different research project, having people pray for their loved ones who are ill, whether close or from a distance. There's research about hospital stays and prayer, no matter what kind of prayer. And that energy in prayer creates less complications, shorter hospital stays, easier recovery across the board. The spiritual side of life is significant. It is huge for healing. It's not the only thing we need, but that's the holistic viewpoints of healing, is to address every single aspect. And anytime you have lived more than 1 year with a condition, that's a chronic disease. Prediabetes, chronic. High blood pressure, chronic. They affect your life and they kill your organs one cell at a time until it becomes a situation where you can't live without medications. And people who can't live without medications are in what I feel a state of slavery. You're at the mercy of the price of the medication. You are at the mercy of the accessibility of the medication. And if you can't afford it, you can't see your doctor to get it renewed, you are a slave to that medication. And there are medications we need. If you are insulin dependent, you need that to live. But the more you work towards making that step, just a shift, a little bit, you will change your trajectory and need less and less and less medication.
So, with that, on your website, you mentioned oxidative stress. So, the genetic testing plays a role, the forgiveness and the spiritual side plays a role. How does oxidative stress play a role, and how do people get rid of oxidative stress or reduce it?
Sometimes it's just limiting your exposure. So I mentioned insecticides and cleansers. There are alternatives that you can use. You can use vinegar in your yard to kill weeds. You can use baking soda to clean your tap. Much safer, no added fragrances, artificial fragrances in our laundry soap. if you are sensitive to those items, they can lead to the big C word. So chronic exposure, chronic low-grade inflammation causes cells to go wacko. Because there are so many more aspects inside your body that prevent you from getting the big C. And I had cancer when I was 23, before I had children. I had invasive cancer into the uterus, and it was very scary. And as you can tell, I have overcome that. I've had 3 grown children now and looking forward to more grandchildren. But at the time, it was scary. And it was a culmination of 50 different things that my body eventually couldn't overcome, because there are more systems inside your body to prevent cancer than you know. It is hard to get cancer. And yet by 3030, they were predicting, they being National Institutes of Health, our government, was predicting a 100% cancer rate. Cancer is big business. Do they teach you what you need to know to prevent cancer? Do they encourage that? When you see commercials on television, how many public service announcements do you see that getting 20 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, which are about a half cup each, it's really not that hard to do. But getting 20 servings of fruits and vegetables a day will prevent cancer, so that you have the ingredients inside your body to help all those systems prevent an erroneous cell from going wacko. None. How many cheeseburger commercials do you see? A lot, with plenty of sex on the side. It's very sexy to eat a sloppy cheeseburger. It's not very sexy to eat a sloppy watermelon, unless you're watching the right movies. But but that's where we're at. The promotions we are seeing affect our thoughts and our choices. And we have to go against societal norms to choose well and to feed our body well so that it serves us well. It is a tool. It is a Maserati that we're putting poor gas, poor fuel in, right? So you decide if you want to be an old rusted out pickup, or if you want to be a smooth running Maserati, or whatever your favorite fancy car is.
That's a great point. People need more antioxidant fruits and vegetables, and I feel like they fail to get them. With that point, obviously I know about strawberries and berries. What are some of the best antioxidant rich foods that people need to put in their bodies, especially if they have chronic diseases like prediabetes, cancer, diabetes, or even if they're just in prevention mode?
So the best ones are the ones that are in season in your neighborhood. Because so many foods, and there's antioxidants in every country. There are probiotics in every country. When you look at every fancy new thing that's on the market, it really came from another part of the world. We just weren't aware of it here yet. Because every part of the world has a superfood, goji berries, acai. I mean, we've got stuff that comes from all over the place. But what is best is grown organically, locally, so that it is on the vine for its full ripening season and not shipped green. Anything that's plucked early off, like bananas, for instance. Everybody loves bananas. They are not grown they're not grown here. Yes. And they are a pretty handy food. They're very portable. They're a fast food, and they're not that horrible for you, really. But they are picked green, gassed to ripen, and shipped, right? So there are a lot of detriments to things that are coming from foreign places to here, because what's grown in my farmer's market, fresh tomatoes, fresh peppers, fresh apples, fresh, in season. And it's kind of fun to see that when things are in season at their highest nutrition level. And I mentioned organic. Organic food is proven through the National Institutes of Health. And this is why it's kind of fun to get someone who reads real science to be your coach. In season foods, organic foods are 6 times more nutritious than their non-organic counterpart. Corn. People are wary about corn because the most corn in our country is genetically modified corn. But if you get organic corn with heirloom seeds, and it is 6 times more nutrient dense than your non-organic counterpart. That's one of the research projects they did. So learning how your food is produced, knowing, and I'll just say this one thing, try not to become a food snob. When I am in an area, rural area that is very limited in its choices, I got ill when I was on vacation in Wisconsin up by a lake in the middle of nowhere. I could not find in their nutrient pill section a garlic pill, because garlic kills virus, bacteria, and fungus. And I barely could find a cranberry pill, which helps change your pH value so that you can heal faster. I had to go to 3 different towns to find a Walgreens, number one, and to find one big enough that still had a couple of those items on the shelf. If you're in a rural area, you don't have access to a lot of things. And thanks to Amazon and FullScript and other online businesses, it's more accessible now than ever before. 10 years ago, it wasn't in existence. But you do the best you can. You have to eat food. If you don't eat, your intestines start to stick together and they don't function for you. The muscles in your intestines don't work, and then it doesn't function for you. Because the opposite, if you carry that to its nth degree and just throw your hands up and say, nothing is good for you, I'm just going to stop eating. That's not a good idea. Try not to get that intensive into researching your foods, but being aware that there is a better step to make. Probiotics I've mentioned. If you're lactose intolerant or dairy sensitive, you need to actually ask the supplement company, how is your probiotic grown? Because most probiotics are grown on milk. It's a cheap way to grow probiotics. It makes it cost effective so that you can get probiotics out to the masses. But there's only a few companies that do not grow their probiotics on milk. And I'm so thankful they did choose to go into business because I cannot take a probiotic that is grown on milk. So there's just so much to know, and choosing your foods more carefully, being more aware, is actually helpful and beneficial. But when you go to Aunt Sally's for a family reunion, you don't know what you're going to run into. So my advice on occasions when you're going to funerals, weddings, there's potlucks at church, take food you can eat and enough to share. So then you don't have to worry about starving until your next meal, because that creates other health problems too. So there's so many aspects, so much planning involved in eating well. So you think about this. When you go on vacation, do you just throw things into a knapsack and go? You plan. When you go to college, do you just read any magazine or book and take the test. No. You plan time for study, you plan. If you want to be successful in your health, do you just throw anything into your shopping cart? No. It just takes planning to succeed. Everything takes planning. Everything worthwhile doing takes planning. One of my favorite cleanses was developed by a gentleman who was diagnosed with lymphoma. His physician said, you have 3 months, maybe 6 months. Get your things, your affairs in order. How would you feel if somebody told you you only had 3 months to live? You've got teenage children. He had 2 daughters. Your wife, your life, your home. How would you feel? How would your family feel if you were told you had only 3 months to live?
Terrified.
Terrified. I had cancer when I was 23 before I had children. I cried daily. I couldn't go shopping because there would inevitably be a baby in a cart, in a stroller, at the mall, at the grocery store, at church. I couldn't go anywhere. I had to transport myself to and from work every day crying because I just always wanted a baseball team of children. I have 3. I don't have a baseball team. I always wanted children. I wanted to know I could have them. I wanted to know if I couldn't have them, I could adopt them. And my husband at the time was not in agreement on adoption. And it was terrifying. Terrifying to me. Stepping into natural medicine, some of us are forced into it. The rest of us just choose differently, and we cannot condemn their choices. But I happen to know overcoming cancer, overcoming bleeding to death, overcoming MS scares, overcoming virus infections, overcoming so many things. I, at some point, asked the Lord, I don't have to catch everything to help people, do I? Overcoming Crohn's, overcoming my DNA. No, I don't have to catch everything to help everyone, but we have so many more answers than the regular medical profession that only has the answer of cut it out, burn it out, chemical you to death. And when you are in an emergent situation, if I'm in a car accident, my brain is swelling, they need to do a craniotomy, give me a ton of prednisone, fine. But am I meant to live on prednisone forever when I just have some joint pain? No. It causes more problems long-term, and chronic disease is never meant to be handled by medications. We're not dying from a lack of aspirin when we have a headache. We're dying from a lack of oxygen, a lack of blood flow, a lack of function. And then we get back to functional medicine. It is so much bigger, but to find your answers takes time and takes effort and takes encouragement and takes love.
I love that because you're right. Like it really all does go back to functional medicine and looking at the body as an interconnected system. And even in your story, or in yesterday's story with Stacy Theodosian, the fact that both of you took the route of holistic and functional medicine, and both of you to this day have children, is amazing. And it just goes to show The traditional medical system, like you said, or even when it comes to the C word, you don't have to die. If you
Yeah.
go to decentmed.org/Hoxie, you'll see that there's other remedies than just radiation and surgery. It comes back to plant medicine, to nutrition, and to looking at the body as an interconnected system and the mind, body, spirit. The fact that you brought up studies, there was a documentary on Netflix. It was called The Blue Zones. And when
Yes.
you looked at the blue zones, there was only one place in all of the US that was a blue zone. It was the Church of Latter-day Saints in California. I think it was Loma Linda, California.
It's not Latter-day Saints.
Oh, okay.
It's
Oh,
Seventh
Seventh-day Adventist. You're right.
Seventh Day Adventist. I happen to be a Seventh Day Adventist. I was part of a Seventh Day Adventist research project for a long time, about 4 years, where they were researching diet, lifestyle, and disease processes. It has lasted as long as and was a larger study than the nurse study that was done on nutrition and lifestyle and disease processes. And plant-based, and you don't have to be perfectly plant-based, but plant-based as much as possible will give you so many more health benefits than you can imagine. And that's part of why the Blue Zone was functional, in that their diet and their lifestyle of having faith, peace in their life, community in their life, and walking, just walking. They didn't even do gym, weightlifting, exercising all the time, but walking daily. And if you walk right after your meals, you will lower your chronic low grade inflammation tremendously. Yes, Seventh day Adventist in Loma Linda. Mm-hmm.
It's so funny that you mentioned that because those are the steps. Like you mentioned, it really blows my mind when you brought up exercise. The fact that you look at the US and people exercise consistently, but typically it's in a massive gym with, very bright lights, and, it doesn't necessarily, I don't know the stats, but it seems like what has a better success, like you mentioned, is going outside, getting the vitamin D and walking.
Mm-hmm.
Typically can do a better job than going to the gym every single day.
Here's the challenge with the gym. Most people who go to the gym are exercising longer than 20 minutes. Your glycogen stores in your liver are only available for about a 20-minute stint. So what happens to your body after 20 minutes of hard exercise? It starts to break down itself by elevating cortisol. We're already stressed and cortisol elevated, and you exercise past your 20 minutes and you raise your cortisol levels to where your body is breaking down your own muscle to provide glucose for your function. That's why the gym is such a challenge, and why we have even more heart disease,
Yeah.
and anxiety and depression and lack of sleep, insomnia, is those elevated cortisol levels.
Okay. Wow. That's just, I mean, that makes so much sense. Because when you try to piece together, when you look at the US, right? It blows my mind that people are not living to be 100, for example. How is it that
There
a
are some.
yeah, they're right, but it's in Loma Linda, California.
One of my clients here in Kansas City
Mhm.
was nearing 102 before she passed.
Wow.
It was crazy. She got adjusted regularly and still drove her own car till she was 95, maybe here and there after that, just a little bit. She was driving 60-year-olds to their doctor appointments. Yeah,
Awesome.
she's spunky.
Wow. And
Yeah.
she probably applied some of these things. Maybe she went to church. Maybe she had community. Maybe she walked consistently. She
She
had a more
engaged
plant-based
with,
diet.
yeah, she engaged with her neighbors. So she had people in and out of her apartment all day long talking with her. She engaged in life, and she loved life and loved hanging out with people and having visitors. Her great grandchildren and grandnieces and nephews would stop through town and stay at her apartment and visit with her. She was just amazing how she stayed connected to people. Yes. And walked and had a little dog. It's kind of nice after you reach a certain level to have a pet that you're forced to get outside with.
Yeah.
And there's research even on pets, and that's why they are accepted as a comfort animal for those with high anxiety and depression.
Yeah, and even when it comes to community, according to Best Count, AppSumo, and other stats, more than 1 in 4 men, 28% under the age of 30, report to having no social connections at all,
Mhm.
versus 15% of men under 30 say they don't have a close friend, and up to 3% in 1990. So it just goes to show you that the new generations, they're losing connection. If
Yes.
they have friends at all, it's five max, which isn't terrible. Jesus only had 12 or 11, but it's still, right? We lose that community.
I tell people
Yeah.
Jesus had 12 disciples, and I'm only human, so I can't keep track of that many people.
Even if you have five friends, but you're continuously in community, it
Yes.
works. The problem is that these new generations, they're not in community. All their communities are here.
And it's false relationship,
Yeah.
false intimacy. It's not someone you can trust with your deepest, darkest secrets. There has to be someone in your life who has heard your stupidity and still loves to hang out with you.
Yeah.
They love to get together and laugh with you. They'll do things with you. They know you got 15 speeding tickets when you were young and they don't care, you know?
Uh, in person. That's like
Yes,
it has to
in
be in
person.
person. And I think that's a big thing that this generation, or my generation and Generation Z and Alpha, they need to really understand, that is that the in person is extremely valuable. And it all comes back to functional medicine. It's the fact that you can heal better. I mean, there's a great statistic I found about people that go to nursing homes. When they go into nursing homes, they die, I think, within 3 years, because they lose that community. People don't want to come see them, and they lose hope. The hope is gone. And I think that with community comes that hope. You brought up your mom. She had some hope. You were coming to see her. She had hope that eventually I will be able to get in the car. I will be able to go to bingo night. I will be able to go and hang out with my friends and do things. And that got her to a place where she brought down the salt levels, and now she can interact and her health is doing better. Versus, like you mentioned, if you just beat her down about, oh, if you wouldn't smoke so much and you would have done this and you would have done da, 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 she would have isolated herself more and got in a cocoon and not wanted to be around, and her health would have declined and she probably could have passed.
And working on these things takes energy. And if you don't have enough energy yourself, you need a friend, a family, someone who cares enough to spend the time. Relationship takes time. Uh, Years back, when my kids were growing up, it was a latchkey society, and the the term was quality time. We need to just make our time that we spend with our family quality, but really we need quantity too. You cannot have a more balanced emotional health without quantity time that is face to face with another human being without an electronic device. Even my husband and I, when we go on dates, we don't take our phones. And it feels real weird because we're used to being connected to our phone and, gee, what if someone needs a message right away? I have a sign on my wall. Let me find it. It says, well, the first one is, it's not ADD, it's high mental energies, because I definitely am ADD and I lose track of what I'm doing or get hyper focused, you know. But the other one says, nothing is an emergency. I have solutions. I am resourceful. I will find a solution. Nothing is an emergency. If it's an emergency, you are calling 911 and you are on your way to the hospital. That's the only, a tree fell in your house. Even that, you don't even have to call anyone that day if you don't want to. Throw a tarp over it. You can get to the insurance company eventually. It's not such an emergent thing that you can't separate yourself from a phone for a moment and connect with your people. Connect. We watch movies all the time of people who serendipitously meet each other, realize they need a connection, and they spend time doing it. But we're watching the movie. My husband watches Bob Ross paint. I said, we have an easel and a canvas and paints in our basement. Why don't we just drag those things out and do something together? You have to make time and just start doing things. Some self-esteem experts suggest that if you do things and practice them, get good at them, you feel a sense of accomplishment. That builds self-esteem. We are a generation of watchers. Let's become a generation of doers. People who live over the age of 80 are not going to the gym. They are gardening. They are walking with their friends. They are engaging, dancing. Go dancing. Go square dancing. There's community. There's action. There's movement. There's action. My one girlfriend is a member of a garden club. They have a community garden they volunteer at, and then they plant plants, which is not a lot of activity, but it is movement with community, and they sell these plants as fundraising for the community garden. It's just amazing if you just stay connected and active and doing, how much healthier you will feel overall.
I love that. And you're so right. We are a community of watchers and not doers. And that's why, today I'm going to prioritize going on walks, and I'm going to start making that a habit of doing at least a half a mile walk every single day. Granted, it's really hot here. It's like 90 degrees. Even though I have a long sleeve, it is burning up outside. You walk outside, you are covered in sweat just going to the shops. I mean, it is very, very hot, but
make your long sleeve shirt either linen or cotton.
Okay.
And your core temperature will stay cooler having sweated in linen and cotton than artificial material. And even they did a core temperature test on someone wearing just t-shirt and shorts versus someone fully dressed in how farmers wore their clothing in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And their core temperature was more normal wearing long sleeve linen shirts than
interesting
shorts and a t-shirt. Yeah. Because your sweat becomes its own air conditioning. Yeah. So don't speak badly about sweat. This is not a Shore commercial. We're doing good.
And I found, like you mentioned, it's going to happen. I'm a hairy guy, but getting that exercise is vital, and getting the walking in. I remember when I was in Canada, I wouldn't Uber. We had like a store that was about a mile away. I think it was about 2 kilometers away, and that's how I got my exercise. I would walk to the store, and then walk back. And like you mentioned, you would feel that accomplishment. You would get that rush of exercise, because I don't like going to the gym. I don't really like lifting weights, but I do like going on walks. I do like being out in nature. Like, those are things that I really enjoy and I find solace and comfort in. And like you even mentioned with dancing, a great story is, back to Stacey Theodosin. And she mentioned to me in our interview that, she spoke with her father, and she's in her 50s and 60s, and her father said, "Why do you dance? And why do you go dancing?" And she told him, she said, "Wouldn't it be weirder if I just stopped dancing altogether and I just stopped finding joy in dancing? Wouldn't you find that weird? Wouldn't you think like, oh, maybe she's depressed?" And he said, "You know what? That's a good point. So keep on dancing." And, I just find it so funny that, when we are doing what we love, finding accomplishment, and like you said, consistently getting exercise, our health improves significantly. And the
Yes.
issue is that I found with the younger generation is that it's all found in vanity. A great example is when I tell providers, don't care about the views. The views don't mean anything. What matters is conversions. If views meant something, then Mr. Beast, the number one YouTuber in the world, he wouldn't have Feastables products. He wouldn't have all of these products that he's selling if YouTube was just the end all be all. So I think that people need to realize that the vanity doesn't matter. And especially like you mentioned, when it comes to your health, I don't, when I was in college, yeah, I was a pretty smart dude, but I still had to study, right? I didn't just walk into the exam and say, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm going to pass the test.
Mhm.
And it's the same thing with your health. Is if we're not informed and we think, oh, I can just eat whatever I want, do whatever I want, we are not DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf works out all the time. He is a tank. We're not working out that much. We
Right.
typically work out 5 days a week if we're lucky, and 30 minutes to an hour a day if we're lucky. His whole job is exercise. And then when you look at performance, you look at, back to athletes, Tom Brady, LeBron James, Serena Williams. One thing they all have in common is that, number one, they're all close to the top in their sports, arguably the GOAT in all of their sports. And not only that, but they eat more of a plant based diet. Tom Brady is known for avocado ice cream and eating a lot of avocado and a lot of plant based foods. Serena Williams is 100% vegan, and LeBron James also eats a plant-based diet. Chris Paul's another example. He's an NBA star. He is still in the NBA and he's in his 40s, and he's a vegan as well. So eating a plant-based diet and eating more plants than meat has shown high performance in the top athletes in the world. So if it does well for them, it's obviously going to do well for us.
Yes. There's even a movie called uh, Simply Raw, Reversing Diabetes in 30 Days. And it was based on going to a retreat where they ate nothing but raw plant-based foods. And the definition of raw here is anything cooked under 90 degrees. And of course, raw beyond that. But they raw foods, took walks, had a peaceful environment. They were away from their homes, so they were not as stressed in that sense, lowering stress. And within 30 days, everyone who continued the program the full 30 days, their blood sugar, basically their blood sugar, their blood pressure, and their medication needs, they were back to normal within that 30-day period, most of them within 2 weeks. And Woody Harrelson is quoted in that movie. When he is ill, any family member is ill, they eat mostly a plant-based diet anyway, but when someone is ill, they go raw. So just using food as your medicine, eating to live instead of living to eat, because food does trigger a huge pleasure response in the brain. But let's learn how to be happier or pleased with a healthier choice. My frozen bananas were very happy for me instead of ice cream. And my body was fed and not drugged down to where I would end up needing diabetic medication, because that's what hypoglycemia leads to later in life, is diabetes. And there's a lot of reasons I chose diabetes as my niche, because it's so fascinating and so varied, and every organ system in your body is affected. There's solutions to helping the whole system. I just had one of my clients who finished a program commend me on just one of the most amazing solutions for her, and that is walking after you eat.
Mm.
You want to know your best time to take that 20-minute walk is right after you eat, when your insulin is the highest and when you can help your body the most.
Hmm.
Take that walk right after you eat. Just a simple walk, not a fast speeding, crazy walk, just a walk, just to move. Within 20 minutes, your blood sugar will be back in normal range as you teach your body to do that. Much easier than if you were to just sit after you eat.
It's funny you mentioned that. Oh, sorry.
Simple solutions that you just begin to incorporate each day. And it's hard to change. It's hard to admit anything we were doing was wrong. We're intelligent people. We're business owners. We're professionals. We know lots of stuff. But making a change just based on what I was doing wasn't right for my body. And now I have to admit I didn't know something. I have to admit I was wrong about something. I was eating candy like that guy you were saying. I was wrong about eating candy. Okay. There's just so many simple shifts that help us need medication less. That it with just the knowledge and what your body needs. We all need to eat, drink, sleep, but you specifically are unique because we're lactose intolerant. That's unique. Some people are allergic to cats. That's unique. Maybe common, but it's still unique. And so to address the issues for each individual person, personally, customized, uniquely, that's what I do.
And I even love how on your website, you don't just focus on only blood sugar. You focus on kidney damage, vision loss, dementia, heart failure, muscle weakness. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that's because you realize that this program, and I'd love for you to speak more in depth on the program, but this program is so much more than just diabetes, because it can help with a myriad of issues, because a lot of disease all comes back to similar things.
Yes. Winners in Diabetes was developed because I was answering the same questions over and over and over and over and over again. And it really comes down to chronic inflammation. Chronic inflammation causes damage to, if you are normal weight, you have 100,000 miles of blood vessels feeding all of your organ systems, your brain, your heart, your digestive tract, your legs, your feet, your toes, your little pinky has blood supply. If the smallest vessels in your body are swollen shut, where is that at? Your heart, your lungs, your kidneys, and your eyes. The most common reason for blindness in the aging is diabetic retinopathy, because those tiniest blood vessels are blocked. either with atherosclerosis or they've been burned by the elevated blood sugar, because elevated blood sugar elevates acid in your body. And that acid burns that 100,000 miles plus of blood vessels. For every 5 pounds overweight you are having 20 more miles of blood vessels to push blood through. So your heart has to work harder to push that blood to those extra 20 miles of blood vessels. And that's 5 pounds. So if you're 20 pounds, that's 5 pounds have 20. 20 pounds then would have 80 more miles of blood vessels. Miles of blood vessels, not just inches, feet, miles of blood vessels. So then your blood pressure elevates. And that's why the importance of all of the medications they're now developing for weight loss. But those medications cause muscle weakness. It causes your intestines to stop moving. It causes other side effects that are just unpleasant. And you're dependent on a medication again that maybe you cannot afford. So, how about if we find a way to address each layer of inflammation, each layer of damage that occurs, through your DNA SNPs even, because when you flip on epigenetics on your DNA, it creates damage for as long as that DNA SNP was on. So that high blood pressure SNP went crazy. And so everything that it affected is damaged now. So we lose a couple of pounds, our blood pressure comes down. The blood vessels that were damaged and the organ systems damaged with it, each cell that missed oxygen died or became a senescent cell dragging energy off of your body. Each of those dead cells or senescent cells have to be eliminated. It all has to be cleaned up. It has to be regenerated because they were damaged and now you've lost a piece. How long does it take before you start feeling the effects of losing pieces? And that's where my mother is. Heart failure, kidney failure, congestive heart failure. So if she stops breathing very well, we can't take her to the ER to get water off of her body. She's medication dependent, but she still has to watch her diet and her lifestyle in order to prevent death. Who wants to be 80? Someone who's 79. Who wants to be 100? Someone who's 99. Our perspective when we're young, when we're 30, I thought I was never going to live past 30. I had cancer when I was 23. 23 years old with cancer. And it's much more common than you know that the young are having cancer. I didn't think I would live past 30. And here I am turning 60 this year. It's a miracle. It's a miracle every year we overcome one more problem that may occur in an organ. And there are solutions every step of the way for healing kidneys, for healing lungs, for healing your brain. We also handle the big C word here. Hyperbaric oxygen tends to be attractive as an adjunct therapy to cancer patients, and we have seen tumors disappear. And I have a couple of extremely difficult cases right now, and I dig and research to find solutions that cross the blood-brain barrier, because that is the hardest area to remove cancer from. And yet it can happen. We have a person in South Carolina who has written a glowing recovery story and review about our care here and what we've helped him to accomplish. And his brain is back to normal after having metastatic cancer in several organ systems, starting with lungs to the liver, to the bone, and to his brain. It's possible to heal with natural medicine. It's scary, it's unknown, but it's possible. We just need to know what your body really needs, and we can find it.
Just test.
Test. Yeah, don't guess. We test. But the program I developed, I have videos that are National Institutes of Health and other research proven things that we have already talked about, even that are positive for blood sugar control, for inflammation control. And everyone who has gone through the program has benefited and reversed their diabetes. I had a call 2 weeks ago from one of my clients who started 4 years ago, and he didn't do everything perfectly, but it takes time again. Again, when you choose that quarter turn, just one little bit, and take that new journey, the diversion is great over time. And I worked with him specifically that first year. 4 years later, he called me up and said, I don't know what's happening. My blood sugar is tanking. It's to the floor. I don't understand. I said, well, what's to the floor for you? He goes, it's dropping down to 75, 70. Really? What happens when you eat? He says it's only going up to 120, 125. Huh. Are you still on any medications? Well, I'm no longer on insulin, but I'm still taking the highest dose of metformin. Huh. Did it ever occur to you that your blood sugar is behaving in normal range? He was floored. I never expected to hear that as the answer you had. I said, work your way down off of the metformin, call your physician, because technically I cannot tell you what to do with medication that's been prescribed by your doctor. But call your doctor, work your way down, 1/2 pill or a pill at a time every day, because your body is beginning to operate normally. Wow.
That's awesome.
How awesome is that? How awesome is that? And we've been able to do that with a lot of people for a lot of things here. But the Winners program itself doesn't just address diabetes, even though that's our focus. It addresses a lot. And you can heal.
The body's connected, right? Yes. The body's an interconnected system. So if you lower blood sugar, you're helping the kidneys, you're helping your liver, you're helping your lungs, you're helping your heart, you're helping so many other diseases. So don't think that I have to have diabetes to do this. Right. I can have a multiplicity of ailments, and this can help me.
The statistics right now is 1/3 of adults in the United States are pre-diabetic. 1/3 of the adult population. Look around you. 1 out of every 3 people you see has pre-diabetes across the board, whether they know it or not. That's the statistics. And diabetes itself is already affected. 37 million people have it. That's 10% of our population. That's 1 out of every 10 people you see. If you have 100 people in your church or in your meeting room, your civic group that you have meetings every month or every so often, 10 of those people out of every 100 have diabetes, and 30 of those people are pre-diabetic, whether they know it or not. That's just amazing. Once you put people to it, once you just sit and think about who's in front of you and how prevalent blood sugar elevation is, and it's a reaction still to chronic low-grade inflammation that companies are pumping out chemical after chemical after chemical, hundreds of thousands of them every year. And they're being approved by the thousands for use in our food, in our water, in our everything. It's just crazy.
That really is. That really is. And even fragrances. You brought up fragrances earlier. Yesterday, Stacy went in depth in episode 2 about fragrances and how if it has the word fragrance, it's very likely that it can cause the C word. So you have to be very careful with these fragrances. These things that smell like melons or berries or peppermints. You're better off utilizing essential oils, like you brought up, and utilizing vinegar and utilizing baking soda. And there's other things that you can obviously watch the episode and learn more about what she's talking about. But it's
When,
just,
when you're making dinner and you're just smelling that cilantro while you're chopping it and you're just loving it, just take a little bit of it, rub it. I mean, it's what it is. You're peeling your orange and there's some oil that sprays off that orange peel. Just,
mm,
yeah. You're making lemonade and you're peeling those lemons. You can put a little slice of the peel, if it's organic, into your lemonade and just boost your essential oil. That's where these essential oils are coming from. Boost that. People used to make candy out of lemon and orange peels. It's very healthy and better for you overall. I in Wisconsin, there is a lot. That's where we go to vacation a lot, and we have some family up there. And walked into dinner to meet family for a dinner out at a restaurant, and she's like, "What's that smell?" I said, "Clove oil." She said, "Why?" I said, "Two reasons. I just love the smell of clove. It's very warming, very inviting, and a little bit of an aphrodisiac. Anything cinnamony is it? And I was on a date with my husband. We were meeting family and just hanging out with him, and he likes the smell. Okay, but clove oil, and this is where research is so cool. It works better to repel ticks than DEET. And I thought we would be sitting outside, so I sprayed clove oil around my ankles, around any open spot that a tick would want to drop into. Just 20 drops of clove oil into about a 2-ounce bottle of water. Shake, 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 spray, spray, spray. And you have something that works better for you than DEET, which is cancer-causing insect repellent. And the only reason they brought it back is because Lyme disease is on the increase. And they don't tell you that it causes cancer, but it does.
it's not. Yeah, of course not.
Yes. Again, what are we seeing for commercials? Cheeseburgers or fruits and vegetables? Right. It's all about the money. Follow the money.
That's a great point. And, I just love how your knowledge base extends so much further than just one field. And that's why I highly encourage you, if you're in the Kansas City area, or sorry, in the Overland Park area,
I'm
definitely,
It's is all metropolitan
yeah,
Kansas City. Yeah.
definitely
Overland.
get an adjustment. And if you have, honestly, you probably do, because 1 in 3. So, definitely do the test, reach out to Dr. Volner, because you probably have pre-diabetes and don't even know it. And if you don't, you might have some vision loss, kidney damage, dementia, heart failure, or heart disease of some sort.
Mhm.
Because how long have you been doing this program?
I've been 20 years in the natural medicine business. I have had the Winners in Diabetes program since 2020.
And what is a instance, you brought up a couple, of someone who had a complex disease or disorder, and how this program has revolutionized their life?
So, one of our clients had a heart attack. And I said, well, then you need to know everything that's in the Reversing Diabetes program. He goes, I don't have diabetes. I have a heart problem. I said, suck it up. He's a friend of mine, very close friends with his wife. I didn't say it that way. I said, end your point. Because what I'm teaching you prevents cancer, prevents heart disease, prevents diabetes problems, just handles your kidneys. It does everything. But I speak about diabetes and blood sugar because that's what the focus was. So he went through the program. We addressed other side effects from other things that he had been doing throughout his life. Recommended the right supplements based on testing because we could shotgun approach by just throwing some minerals at you, throwing some CoQ10s, throwing some blood thinning herbs at you. But how about if we know what is really going to work for you specifically? Because I've had people try herbs that didn't work for blood sugar control, or they're allergic to them. I had a client who was allergic to absolutely every medication, including insulin, for blood sugar control. Her blood sugar was 300 regularly, over 300 regularly. She had a non-healing wound, and she was referred to me because of the wound. And so the hyperbaric oxygen helps with non-healing wounds. It's FDA approved for that purpose, but no one would prescribe it to her so she could go to the hospital and actually get hyperbaric oxygen therapy to heal this wound. So she did hyperbaric oxygen, and we started researching other things she hasn't tried, including she thought she was eating enough throughout the day. Her body was actually eating itself because she did not eat enough throughout the day. So we taught her how to eat enough on schedule, and we found through our research the only herb blend that she's not allergic to that's helping to keep her blood sugar lower and her feet stay well. It's miraculous. So we have the heart patient, we have the diabetic patient allergic to everything. There was another patient who walked in, blessing. She's young, only in her early 40s. Not quite that old, I don't think. Young. And she was a hardworking woman. She devoted her life as a chaplain. She had gone through chaplaincy school. She was in her internship. She was working at the hospital and working nonstop. I don't know if you've ever taken care of or tried to counsel people who are sick in a hospital, but there's a lot of them, and it requires a lot of your time. And then you have to record everything you do, documentation. So she was not eating. She was not eating well. She would grab something fast, and she couldn't figure out why. She had no energy. Her skin was broken out all the time. She was diabetic. She couldn't lose weight, even though she wasn't eating. She couldn't lose weight. She was about 30 pounds overweight. And just in 3 short weeks, she was able to sleep. She was able to eat. She was able to get clearer skin in 3 short weeks. And she continues to do what I taught her and has changed her whole future. Her blood sugar is in control. Her blood pressure is normalizing. She gets sleep. Her husband learned from what she was doing. And so this is the beauty of the program. If you are doing the program as a couple, it's not any more expensive except the test. You buy in once. You each need your own test. That's the difference in the cost, so that we know what each person's DNA and oxidative stress issues are. But he's healthier. And he didn't even know he needed to be healthier compared to her. But when we started talking about some of the side effects of the diabetes and the lack of eating and the lack of nutrition, and she was also, there's another problem that women have in their 40s. They begin having a lot of problems with their menstruation. She was also having extremely heavy cycles, out of control, and she was on hormone therapy to try and balance it, and it wasn't working. The problem was malnutrition. She needed minerals. Calcium helps to stop bleeding. Magnesium helps to soften the heart so your blood pressure can go down. Zinc helps your immune system. Iodine helps prevent fibroids, helps your thyroid with metabolism. She was malnutritioned. And think about it. When you're a student in school, you're 4 or 5 years hardworking, and there's no stopping. And if you're working on top of school, there's no stopping. We have to take a hold of good nutrition. If you're going to be working like that, you need to eat like a real athlete, not candy. When I was in chiropractic college, so chiropractic education is a medical school, except there are 5 or 7 more classes that we take that other medical professionals don't. So the number of clinical hours, the number of student hours is greater in chiropractic college than in medical school. And I was exhausted. I had 3 children. They were about 7, 10, and 12 years old. And I was exhausted coming home and doing home things and studying and going to school. I had to cut out foods that were very low dense nutrition and increase my nutrient intake to work at that level in order to survive it. It was crazy. I had to purposefully take time. There was a room at the school that was quiet in the middle of the afternoon. And when I felt tired, I actually went and took a nap. I set an alarm. I took a nap. It's legit. You have to take care of your own body to survive high stress environments, or you just won't succeed. You won't make it through. You will be sick. I made it. And 20 years later, and helping hundreds of people, probably thousands by now. I haven't really counted. But I have a few thousand people in my database. So that could be how many people I've helped in the last 20 years to be better, to have a more whole and fulfilling life in multiple ways. I even had someone with thyroid trouble pay me just to come to talk because she got more out of visiting with me and getting that perspective shift, just that quarter turn. She got more out of visiting with me than seeing her counselor. Now, I'm not taking that position that I'm taking over counseling, but sometimes we just need some practical, thought-changing steps to help us succeed in our physical health, our mental health, our spiritual health, our emotional health. And lower your blood pressure, lower your blood sugar, lower your damage, and live full and happy.
And it's very hard to have a 5-star rating for being in business as long as she has been. She has over 180 reviews, a 5-star rating, and multiple testimonials. So it works. The studies validate her work. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Volner, you're working on some chiropractic studies, correct?
I am working on one right now. And it's just a case study uh, about how does increasing your muscle mass when you can't exercise, because I have a machine here at the office called MCella.
Mhm.
And MCella is high intensity focused electromagnetic energy pulsed into your pelvic floor for reduction is the FDA approved for incontinence for men and women and sexual dysfunction in Canada and soon to be sexual dysfunction here in the United States too.
Hmm.
And so we have helped people post prostate surgery. It takes about 22 to 28 visits to really reverse some of the damage that occurs post prostate surgery, which you know is happening a lot for benign prostate hypertrophy and prostate cancer patients. So then you become cancer free and you have to wear a diaper the rest of your life because physical therapy doesn't work well for some people. And the few that we've had here have been over a year working physical therapy, medications, and such, trying to get their urinary control and fecal control back. And MCella has been the only thing that has helped them. And we help them in a very short period of time. So 20 visits twice a week, that's 10 weeks. So within 2.5 months, it took to get full control, sleeping through the night and all day long with no diaper. And it costs less than the cost of what most people are spending on urinary control products. People spend anywhere from $900 to $2,500 a year in products to control urine, smell, diapers, pads, laundry soap, because you're doing double the laundry, paddings for the bed. It is such an embarrassing, shame feeling problem. So I'm now taking that machine and applying it to hips and thighs, which are some of the larger muscles in your body, and muscle helps to store blood sugar. Again, exercise is good for blood sugar control, but remember that 20-minute limit. So we are using this machine 20 minutes, rotating the muscles and building the muscle to see how it affects A1C over a short period of time, 12 visits. So it's really going to be amazing to see the results, but I could tell you already just my quality of life of changing how I'm using this machine on hips and thighs has helped my own blood sugar control as well as my strength. That property in Wisconsin we vacation at, the dock is 75 steps from the door of the cottage. So if you have to go to the bathroom, get lunch, get supper started, you're going up and down this hill 5 times at least a day. My legs made it. I did not huff and puff up the hill. I have stronger legs. Wow. Sitting on a chair for 20 minutes, and I only did it 4 times before I went on vacation. So just to build strength, I know it works. And I am also using it for another client who has paralysis from a spinal cord injury and walks with 2 canes. And some days she needs a full walker or she can't walk. Now that she's been using MCella for exercising the weakest muscles in her limbs, she only uses the 2 canes and doesn't ask for much assistance anymore. Not very long either. She hasn't done all 12 therapies on it. So now she's using it on her hand to try and get more muscle control because her right side is what was affected by this. So post-stroke, I could see this being helpful because you don't have enough balance to exercise and you need to get more strength, because I know we've used hyperbaric oxygen post-stroke to gain mental clarity because the blood vessels in the brain have been hindered. And so we open those back up with hyperbaric oxygen. But the Emcella is helping with muscle strength and muscle control where there has been some paralysis. It's pretty awesome.
And that will be live at decentmed.org/chiropractic once her study is published and ready to go. Dr. Teresa, it's been a pleasure. Me and the audience has learned so much. What are your final thoughts and takeaways for the audience?
Love is so important. Love in the deepest sense of the word that brings peace and a desire for the well-being of yourself and everyone around you. So much so that there was even research out of a foreign country, and right now it escapes me, Germany or one of the Slavic countries, that it is one of the blue zones. That sense of community, staying connected, talking friendly to each other, seeking the best for each other, actually lowers heart disease, diabetes, cancer. There's zero cancer pretty much in that environment. There's zero heart disease. You have to be pretty extremely not connected in that environment. But that's why it's considered a blue zone, is because there's very little heart disease there, even though they eat a lot of processed sausage kind of foods. So staying connected, staying in love, being loved, loving others is so huge. And if you need help with the rest, I'm here for you.
That's awesome. Make sure to visit totalcarechiro.com for chiropractic adjustments, hyperbaric oxygen, spinal decompression, and so much more. And if you're in Overland Park, definitely visit the office. And finally, anywhere in the US, 1 in 3 people have prediabetes. Visit totalcarehealthsolutions.com and definitely try the program. This has been Decent Med Spotlight, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me.